So, we've been looking, well, we're continuing our saunter through the refuge of the Suryamati Buddhist order, and we've been looking at the teachers of the past. It's rather murky crew up at the top here. And last week I talked about Atisha. One of the things that Atisha was most famous for was introducing what's called the mind training tradition to Tibet. And the mind training tradition, yeah, it's really been hugely influential on Tibetan Buddhism and I think on Buddhism generally. It's really it's a very pithy sort of the whole Dharma in something that you can memorise. And one of the aspects of the mind training tradition, it's got this. It says, use slogans to train in all activities. So it's got these things that you can remember. It's about bringing the Dharma into daily life. It's got these things that you can use to remember what you're about. That you use slogans, sayings, short, pithy sayings that you remember. And you use those as a sort of guide to your everyday life. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to hear from three people talking about their favourite or a slogan that they really appreciate from the mind training tradition. I'm not sure we've all quite chosen slogans, but we've all chosen lines from the mind training tradition. So first of all, Suryamati is going to talk about...
I'm going to talk about see all dharmas as dreamlike.
And I'm going to nick your chair.
So see all dharmas as dreamlike is my slogan. And this is dharmas with a small d, not a capital D. Okay, so you've all come across the Dharma in the sense of being the teaching of the Buddha. That's got a capital D usually. And you've probably come across the Dharma in the sense of being reality, the way things really are. That's also got a capital D. But actually, there's a third use of the word Dharma, and this has a small d, not a capital, and it kind of means phenomena, things. So, see all dharmas as dreamlike, you could just translate as see all phenomena as dreamlike. So, see the world as dreamlike, see your experience of reality as dreamlike. Okay, so that's what this slogan is about. And the dreamlike nature of the world is a very common theme in Buddhism, especially in the perfection of wisdom teachings of Buddhism. And some of you will have come across some of those. I'll read just one example, which is a verse from a very famous sutra called the Diamond Sutra, which is one of the perfection of wisdom sutras. And just a very short section from it. The Diamond Sutra advises us, so you should view all the fleeting worlds, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. Okay? So the Diamond Sutra is saying, that's how we should view the world, the fleeting worlds, it says, the fleeting worlds that we're part of, that we know. We should treat them like a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, and so on, or a dream. So reflecting on all phenomena as dreams is obviously regarded as a very useful Buddhist practice, and it's there through a lot of Buddhism. And this is not saying that the reality that we experience is a dream. It's saying, it's encouraging us to see or to treat the reality that we experience as a dream. It's not a statement about what reality is like, it's a metaphor for what reality is like. So how is dreaming a metaphor for reality? I suppose at its most obvious level, we could say that looking back at a dream from the waking state might be like looking back at our current lives and our current experience from the perspective of enlightenment. So there's a kind of analogy there. If we were enlightened, we might think that our current experience was a bit like a dream. So anyway, what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to talk about 4 ways in which our world is dreamlike. And I'm going to tell you 1 or 2 of my dreams. So, where to start? So I'm going to start off with, well, dreaming is all in the mind. Okay? Dreaming is all in the mind. Everything in a dream is created by our minds. I don't think any of you would disagree with that. I did not go flying last night. I didn't find this huge ramshackle house with all sorts of run-down rooms that I didn't know were there. I didn't meet loads and loads of very strange people. I was actually in bed all night. It all happened in my mind. Okay. But if you really examine the nature of your experience, you'll realise that most of our waking experience is like that as well. All we know is what we experience with our minds. So there's a sense in which, well, all our experience is mind created. It's all mind. So you could say, well, my mind has made my reality. My mind makes the world that I inhabit. Your mind makes the world that you inhabit. And there's a sense in which the extent to which we agree on how things are in the world is kind of, well, it's a kind of joint creation of reality, a joint dreaming, if you like. All of which is pretty amazing and pretty mind-boggling. So I'm not going to go on about that at length. But I think that's one of those things that is worth just mulling over at the end of a meditation, when your mind's a bit flexible and you're a bit concentrated. There's lots in this slogan that you could meditate on, actually. All dharmas are dreamlike. See all dharmas as dreamlike as one. And another one is, our experience is mind-made. Our worlds are mind-made. Okay, so now I'm going to leave the mind-boggling stuff for a minute, and I'm going to tell you one of my dreams. So this is a dream that I had on a recent solitary. I'd completely forgotten about it until I was wanting a dream to give as an example in my talk. So in this dream, I am escaping from a vast building. It's huge, really huge, modern building, quite complicated. But I want to escape. And suddenly, trying to escape, this white-coated woman appears. And I'm suspicious. I think, is she going to stop me or is she going to help me? Anyway, she appears to want to help me. So she helps me into an escape hatch. And she shuts the door behind me as I open the door in front. And then I'm out into this kind of, into the sky, because I'm really high up in this building. So then I'm flying. And I'm propelled by these jet wrist straps. That's true. I've got these wrist straps on my wrists, and they're jet propelled, and I'm flying through the air. And I'm gliding over. It's wonderful, actually. I'm gliding over this huge hospital building. I don't know how I know it's a hospital, but it's a great big white complex building, and it's laid out below me. And it's lots of small buildings, and in between there are lots of really, really green trees. And I'm just gliding over this thinking how beautiful it looks. Absolutely stunning. It's green, 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 and white, white, white. It's gorgeous. Anyway, so I'm gliding over this, enjoying it actually to begin with, and then I think, yeah, but actually what I really want is, I really want to get clear of all this. I want to get out into space. And my wrist jets are not strong enough. I can't get up. I can glide, but I can't really get up there. And then, like Mary Poppins, Kate Arrowsmith appears. And Kate Arrowsmith has in her hand an umbrella. And she offers me the umbrella and says, will this help? And I think, I'm not sure that the umbrella's going to get me very far. But I'm quite grateful. And the next thing that happens is, I'm on the ground, and there's Kate with her umbrella, and there's also Terry and Alice. And then a whole lot of you people all appear, and you've all got these umbrellas. And I think, well, you know, maybe if I had this many umbrellas, maybe I might be able to get up there. And then I wake up. So, yeah, it's an interesting dream. You know, at the time, You know how it is with dreams? You kind of wake up and then the next morning you think, oh yeah, that dream, that's a bit weird. And I scribbled a few notes because I thought, oh, I might think about that later. And I just forgot about it. And I completely forgot about it until I went back to my retreat diary looking for an example dream. I thought, oh, that's an interesting one, I'll use that one. So, and I suppose there's a point in that actually, because one of the things about dreams is, so second point about dreams, everything in a dream eventually just vanishes and is completely gone. It's all completely impermanent. One minute I'm in this big building trying to escape, another minute I'm flying, the next minute I'm with a whole load of you people and you've all got umbrellas. And then I'm awake. And then I'm doing something else and the whole thing is completely gone. And, well, in a way, life is the same, isn't it? We're in the middle of something, we're immersed in some sort of situation, things are happening, and then later it's only a memory. And actually, after a bit of time, unless it's something that's really special, really traumatic, really pleasurable, really memorable, then actually we just completely forget it. All the minutiae, all the small things that happen to us in life, after a while they're gone. Especially as you get older, more and more of it goes. So yeah, I mean, I think back on my life and I can remember the highs and the lows. I can remember, the really special things that happened to me. I can remember the things that I really longed for and then got. And actually, even them, they're now memories, they're gone. They're usually worn out or they've been discarded or they're broken or whatever. And there's so much that I just can't remember. Years go past and I can hardly remember anything about them. So our lives are a bit like dreams. They're really important when they're happening, and then they're gone. So seeing all dharmas as dreamlike means remembering impermanence. It means remembering that actually our lives and everything that happens to us, everything we have, everything we do, well, it's all impermanent. It passes. And that's one of the really... Well, it's one of the marks of conditioned existence, isn't it? One of the lakshanas, anicca, or impermanence. So all dharmas are dreamlike because, like my jet wrist straps, they just won't last. And that brings me on to the third point, because in a dream, well, we're kind of the leading actor, aren't we? We're the main one. We're what it's all about. We're at the centre of everything. Everything that happens in a dream is in relation to us. And I know Jung and other psychologists say, well, in a dream, everything in a dream, everyone in a dream is some aspect of you. But I'm not talking about dreams in that kind of psychological sense, although I suppose in a way it's related. What I mean here is that in dreams we are the lead actors. We are the centre around which the action evolves. Or revolves rather. Nothing happens in a dream that doesn't affect us. We wouldn't dream it if it wasn't in relation to us. So, in my flying dream, Kate and Terry and Alice and all of you, well, you were all there, and I could kind of feel some of the warmth that I feel about all of you, but in a way, you were cardboard cutouts. You were just there serving the action in my dream. You were the bit parts, I was the star. And, well, life is a bit like that, isn't it? We live our lives at the centre of our own universes. We tend to think of ourselves as being the star, the centre of the universe, the important one. And in reality, it's not really quite like that. Because, well, there's an awful lot of us, and we're all the centres of our universes. So, seeing all dharmas as dreamlike means remembering anatman. It means remembering the fact that the self that we have built is a bit of an illusion. Well, not a bit of an illusion, it's just an illusion. We've built a self that is the centre of the world, that we kind of protect and feed and look after. But actually, the truth is that there's an awful lot of selves. The truth is that we're not really a separate self. We're part of something that is much bigger. We're part of something that's actually rather huge and beautiful and intricate and connected with everything else. So, yeah, seeing all dharmas as dreamlike means remembering that we're not separate, we're actually we're interconnected with everyone and everything else. And then the next thing about dreams is that we tend to take them very, very seriously. So what we experience in a dream feels very real. And because of that, we feel real excitement, real pleasure, real fear, real embarrassment. And we rarely ask ourselves in our dream, well, is this really important? So I'll tell you about another of my dreams. So this is a recurring anxiety dream. In this dream, I'm late for something really important. It's often not clear what it is that's really important, but what I know is that I'm late for it, and all sorts of things are happening to stop me getting there. And in these dreams, getting to my destination in spite of the obstacles is so important. I'm really worried about it. I'm really worried about what's going to happen if I don't get there. And things keep happening. I meet people, there are accidents, all sorts of things just get in my way. In fact, it's even more unpleasant and painful when I have an anxiety dream than being in that sort of situation in real life, because actually in real life I'm quite sensible. I'll pick up a phone and say I'm going to be late, or I'll think, okay, well, I can't let them know I'm going to be late, but things happen, life happens, can't be perfect all the time. But in my dream, it's really important, and I'm really in that anxiety. So seeing all dharmas as dreamlike means remembering dukkha, means remembering the unsatisfactoriness of existence. And the reason for that unsatisfactoriness is that our partial, self-referential point of view is what causes us an awful lot of pain. An awful lot of the unsatisfactoriness of life is because, well, we're the centre of the universe and we're trying to be perfect, we're trying to manage the universe to be as we want it, to be in accord with what we want. And, well, I suppose that means that we just take the ups and downs of life a bit too seriously, really. If we can hang looser to things, keep things more in perspective, not cling on to the pleasant things and be disappointed when they end, not resist the things we think are going to be painful, but accept them as equanimously as we can, we'll be moving towards a more real view of reality. So when I regard doing a talk at Sanganite as a big deal, which I sometimes do, and I worry about whether it's going to be good enough, and what people will think of me, and whether they'll like my examples, whether they'll like my style, whether they'll understand the way I put things, then I can get myself really tied up in lots of anxiety. But if I care a bit less about what I look like, and just think about, well, what am I going to say that is going to be helpful to people, then, well, a lot of this, I can save myself a lot of suffering. Okay, so, have I got time? Yes, I'm going to say a little bit about waking up to the dream. Because sometimes when I'm dreaming, I realise I'm dreaming. I don't know whether that happens to you. Usually for me, it's when I'm just sort of half waking up. I'm half waking up and I'm realising that I'm waking up, but I'm still half in the dream. And at that point, if it was a nice dream, I can sometimes go back into it. So sometimes I think, oh, that was nice, I'll go back there and do something else in it. And I go back into the dream knowing it's a dream. Occasionally, I wonder in a dream whether I'm dreaming. And whether there is in fact any reason to worry about what I'm concerned about. So my anxiety dream, every so often, I begin to tumble that this might be a dream. And I think, is this right? Is this real? Or am I dreaming? Now, that's not quite lucid dreaming, which, as I understand it, means that you realise you're dreaming and you influence the outcome of the dream. And I think that would be great. And I'm told that that lucid dreaming is something that some people can do and some people can develop. And I'm also told that it's a technique that is sometimes used by people to address recurrent nightmares. So I have a friend who in a recurring nightmare started to summon up Vajrapani to protect her, which I think is a really, really good strategy. So I think that lucid dreaming seems like a really creative thing to do. But it seems to me that we could apply some lucid dreaming analogies to our own lives, that we could kind of wake up periodically to what's happening to us and just realise that, well, just begin to sort of see the nature of what's going on, to decide that, well, it is a bit dreamlike, and I won't take it too seriously, and just begin to take a bit more control of our lives. Okay, so I think it's time for some practical lessons. All dharmas are dreamlike. I think the practical lessons are, remember to hold our experience lightly. Like dreams, the things that happen to us are impermanent. Remember that, and so that's the first thing, they're impermanent, they're not going to last, so we can afford to hang a bit looser to them. The second thing is, remember that our perspective isn't the only one. So, yeah, that's it really. Remember that there's a wider perspective than just ours. And that means remembering interconnectedness. The more we work at seeing things from the perspective of others, the more we widen our own perspective. And the closer we get to wisdom, and the closer we get to compassion. So, yeah, finally, I'll admit that it was only when I came to write this talk that I realised that the dream that I'd had on my solitary had borrowed a metaphor about interconnectedness from a Mahayana sutra. Some of you might already have realised this. I didn't realise at the time, I didn't realise it until I read it again. So the Mahayana sutra is called the Vimalakirti Nirdesha. And yeah, in the Vimalakirti Nirdesha, the parasols, in the Vimalakirti Nirdesha, there's a scene in which there are a whole lot, I think it's 500, charioteers come out from the city of Vaisali to meet the Buddha. And apparently they come out in chariots, and there are all these handsome young warrior men from the local city who are dressed in wonderful finery, and each one of them is carrying a parasol. Now, in Mahayana Buddhism, a parasol is a sign of respect. So they're all carrying a parasol as a kind of respect for the Buddha. And a wonderful thing happens, because when they arrive, the Buddha performs a kind of miracle. And the parasols are all given to the Buddha, and the Buddha makes them into this amazing canopy, a jewelled canopy full of glittering light and jewels that covers the whole universe. And everybody goes, ah! And in the commentaries, we read that the parasols are a kind of metaphor for the bodhicitta, for interconnectedness, if you like. That actually the idea is that each parasol represents the individual aspirations of just one person. So one person's individual spiritual aspirations might be quite important. They might be quite important to them, but they're not amazing. But if you take them together, then they become something that is altogether amazing and powerful, and, well, a bit sort of gobsmacking, really. So I realised that that's, in a way, that's what had been suggested to me, or that's what had suggested itself to my dream. And I think that's a great analogy for interconnectedness. So, just make sure I haven't missed anything out. Yeah, okay. So when we rise above our own stuff and think of ourselves as part of a sangha, then we rise above. We create together something that's bigger than just our own personal spiritual aspirations. And we get the faint glimmerings of the bodhicitta, intimations of how things really are.
Yeah, my slogan covers some of the same territory about not getting so involved in the ups and downs, being a bit lighter to our experience. This is, yeah, as I say, it's one of my favourite mind training slogans. When evil fills the world and its inhabitants, change adverse conditions into the path to awakening. Well, when evil fills the world and its inhabitants, I mean, that could be when really terrible things happen, but it could just be when things go wrong. When things go wrong and when people do us wrong. Under those circumstances, it's saying, change adverse conditions into the path to awakening. So the ordinary trials and tribulations of everyday life. When things go wrong, when people do you wrong, change this from a problem, a source of sadness and anxiety to be complained about and bemoaned, change it from that into the path to awakening. Well, wouldn't that be nice? But how do we make that change? How do we make that change? Surely when things go wrong, that is the way it is. That's the truth. Something's gone wrong and it's bad. Or someone is bad. And if we try to change this by denying it, we're just deluding ourselves. Surely. Well, actually not so. Actually not so. In Shakespeare's play Hamlet, Shakespeare puts these words into Hamlet's mouth. Hamlet says, "There is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so." I'm sure Shakespeare doesn't mean here ethically good or bad. He's not saying killing people is fine as long as you think it is. He's not saying that. He means that the labels good and bad that we put on situations and experiences depend on how we think about those situations and experiences. There is nothing good or bad, nothing desirable or undesirable, nothing good or adverse, but thinking makes it so. How we think about what is happening, the story we tell ourselves about it, determines whether we see it as good or adverse. So, for example, two people lose their jobs. One person tells themselves a story in which life is about career and financial security, and for them it's a disaster. Another people tells themselves a story in which life is about seeking variety and not getting stuck in routine, and for them it's great, they've lost their jobs, fine. Or two people are cold and wet and tired in a blizzard on top of a mountain. For one person who tells himself that the story that he's doing this from his own free will for a bit of an adventure and fun, this is an exhilarating experience. For somebody else, maybe with him, who tells himself the story, this is a ridiculous thing to be doing, he's been dragged along by stupid friends. This is a thoroughly unpleasant experience. Or two people are running, they've gone a bit further than usual, two people are running, they're out of breath and hurting a little. One person tells himself the story that the pain is a sign he's gone beyond his usual limits, so he's stretching himself, making himself fitter, and it's doing him good, and for him the discomfort doesn't matter in the least, it's a good thing. Another person tells himself the story that he shouldn't be feeling this pain, he'd rather be watching the telly, and for him running is an unpleasant ordeal. There is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. The story we tell about what's happening determines whether we think it's good or bad. The way we think about life and the way we think about the situations we're in creates adverse and not adverse. So we can change adverse conditions into something else by changing the way we think about them, by changing the stories we tell. We aren't deluding ourselves when we do that. In fact, we're deluding ourselves if we think that the labels good and bad we put on things have some sort of real objective reality. There's some absolute truth in those. We can change the way we see a situation, and by changing that, we see that differently. We see completely differently. So there's a sort of semi-technical term that's sometimes used for this in some quarters, which is reframing. So it's as though we have a frame, which is the story we tell about things, and we can change that. We choose to think differently about something, we reframe it, and it has a different meaning. So if the person who rejects the discomfort of running thinks, I shouldn't be feeling this, if they instead see the pain as a sign that they're getting fit, then tell a different story, then running becomes a different experience. The pain of running becomes something that they'll welcome. Reframing is a very, very powerful tool. And being a Buddhist is a lot about reframing the way we see things from the normal worldly frame that we've been brought up with and conditioned to accept, to seeing them from a dharmic perspective. This is what the Mind slogans often remind us to do. This is the dharmic perspective. Remember this. So the usual worldly frame that we use to think about experience can be summed up in what are called the 8 worldly winds. These are 4 criteria that our story tells us to decide whether things are good or bad. So gain and loss, whether we're gaining material things or money or losing it. Praise or blame. Do people approve of us or do they disapprove? Are we getting approval or disapproval? Pleasure or pain? Pain including just discomfort. Are we getting nice experiences or not nice experiences? Fame and infamy, the 4th one's usually described that. Probably for us it's more like status and lack of status, actually. So according to the worldly frame, the worldly story, a situation is good when we're gaining money or possessions, or getting lots of praise or approval, or having lots of pleasant experiences, or we're getting further up the pecking order. And a situation is bad, adverse, when we're losing money or possessions, when people are disapproving of us, or blaming us for something, when we're suffering discomfort, or actual pain, and when we're sliding down the pecking order, when our talks aren't appearing on Free Buddhist That tends to sum up a lot of our usual frame, the story we usually tell. And the problem with this, there are a couple of problems with this story. One is that there is absolutely no way on earth you can always get the positive sides of these and not get the negatives. It just cannot be done. You cannot control the world that much. So our mental states go up and down and up and down and up and down when we're not just bored. Now happy when we get something new, or we get somebody praises us, or we get some pleasure, or we go up the pecking order. Now, it's terrible when we lose something, when we think someone might be blaming us or disapproving of us, when the thing that we planned that was going to be so wonderful is cancelled, the holidays cancelled, the meals cancelled, the romantic assignations cancelled, etc., etc., etc. Up and down. Now happy because we're getting something, now depressed or angry because we're not. And then we might add this famous second arrow as well. The Buddha said we don't just get one arrow when something bad happens, we stab ourselves with the second one. So we don't just get unhappy or angry when we get lost, blame, pain or something. We also get anxious because we might. Well, that's clever, isn't it? So we get anxious because somebody might disapprove of us, or we might lose something. Our shares might go down, our salary might get cancelled, or we might not get that lovely experience that we were looking forward to. So that's one problem with the worldly winds. A second problem is that using the worldly winds as our frame, as a story we tell about what makes good and bad, is that just going for the supposedly positive sides of the worldly winds doesn't actually lead us into real benefit, doesn't lead to our real benefit. In fact, trying to always get the positive side of the worldly winds is spiritually poisonous. It will lead to unhappiness and suffering. So gain and loss. We all know that money doesn't make us happy, I think. The richest relative I have is also the one who is most unhappy. And his manor house in the home counties and his several jags and his racehorses do not make up for the fact that he is full of resentment for his wives and for the government, his ex-wives and the government, and he's always worried people are swindling him. Money doesn't bring happiness. And if we make money and possession the guiding principles of our life, well, our life will be empty of spiritual meaning because we won't have time for spiritual meaning. Praise and blame. or approval and disapproval. If we always want the approval of others, we can never be our own person. We will always be controlled by other people's views and what other people want. We'll never grow up. So that's not a very good one, is it? Pleasure and pain. If we always try to get pleasant feelings and run away from unpleasant feelings, we become addictive and weak. We can never say no to the cigarette or the drink or the biscuit or the sexual invitation or the holiday when there's work that needs doing. We can never do anything challenging that will stretch us because being stretched physically and mentally is uncomfortable. So we always shy away from it. We're ruled by momentary feelings, and this means we can never be in the gap. We're always going around the wheel of life. We can never be creative. If we just try to get pleasure and avoid pain, if we see that as really important, avoid discomfort, we get weak and unable to put up with discomfort. And in the end, some discomfort and pain is inevitable. So when that happens, we haven't got the strength to ride it out. And somebody who has taken a more robust approach to life, accepting a bit of grit in the oyster, will actually be much more happy. Fame and status, lastly, fame and status or lack of it, position on the pecking order. The fact that fame doesn't bring happiness is so well known that it's become a truism in our language. Where does it get you? We all know that celebs, look at their lives, they're not sort of bounding in happiness, are they? And then we all know how ridiculous people look when they seek status, how daft the status symbols look when we stand back from them, how obviously they speak of somebody's lack of fragile sense of self-worth, that I must make myself look good by having this ridiculous vehicle or whatever it might be. And if we make competition with our fellow human beings the guiding principle of our life, getting up the pecking order, well, spiritual life goes out the window, doesn't it? Because that's not about meta. So the 8 worldly winds, the usual story we tell about what makes a situation good or bad, what we should go for and what we should avoid, is a very, very poor frame in terms of helping us to lead a happy and fulfilled life. It's a very, very unhelpful story. If we want to lead a happy and fulfilled life, we need to reframe that. We need to change the way we think about things from the worldly perspective we've been conditioned to have to a dharmic perspective. So if we remember that slogan, change adversity into the path to awakening, if we keep saying that slogan to ourselves and keep it in mind, that we can change what we usually think of as bad into the path to awakening, that we can not see life as being about money and possessions and pleasure and approval. If we reframe that to a dharmic perspective, where life is about cultivating positive mental states, no matter what the situation, that don't depend on outer conditions, and finding new and creative ways to respond to difficulty, so that we grow beyond the person we used to be and we become bigger. So if instead of thinking, oh my God, there's that difficult meeting coming up, there'll be rows, there'll be conflict, and so-and-so is going to really get at me. We think, how can I behave creatively in this situation to make it work, to arrive at a good decision? Instead of getting depressed and annoyed because our holiday's cancelled, we remember that, pleasure is not the same thing as happiness. We've probably missed out on some pleasure. It's not the same thing as happiness. What can I do that's going to be creative with that time? It might actually be better. Instead of dreading and angsting or ranting about having to spend some time with a really difficult person, we might think, an unpleasant person, great. A real opportunity to practice metta. So if we keep that slogan in mind, we keep a dharmic perspective on life. And that transforms our ordinary life from Shakespeare's tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing, full of emotional ups and downs about nothing, it transforms that into a spiritual practice. It creates a life of meaning in which we can grow and develop and blossom. And if we remembered that slogan, if we really thought about things that way, we would go beyond anxiety. Because it's the 8 worldly winds that we get anxious about. If we really held that dharmic perspective, we were beyond anxiety, the great problem of our age. We'd have equanimity. And equanimity means equal-mindedness, but it's not a sort of flat, neutral state of mind. It means a mind of consistent positive emotion that doesn't depend on what the world does to us or whether people are nice to us, but comes from our own spiritual practice, our own sense of our strength and our potential and our creativity. So the dharmic perspective, if we could keep it, would be the cure for negative mental states, and it would be the cure for anxiety. Just those few words, changing adverse conditions into the path to awakening, if we repeat them and remember them, can keep the dharmic perspective in our mind, firmly in our mind. So that little slogan, if we could really keep it in our mind, soak our mind in it, let it infuse our thinking, would change our lives completely. Which is why it's one of my favourites.
I rediscovered the 7-point mind training about 6 months ago when I was in a really difficult situation with my family. My mum had been ill for a long time and my dad had died. And we all had to spend time together under one roof in a way that we hadn't done since we were kids. And there was a lot of anger and hurt and blame flying around. And I don't know if you know Dharma Dinner. She's one of the founding women of the Tree Rattler community, and I think she's great. And when I was going home one week, I found that she'd done a series of talks on Free Buddhist audio. So I downloaded them just because I wanted to listen to her, but it turned out that they were on the 7-point mind training. I'd read Pema Chodron's book, Start Where You Are, a few years ago. But I just thought it was impossible. I remember thinking it was a really encouraging read and really lovely, beautifully written. But I remember thinking, I just can't put this stuff into practice. It's just too hard. It's completely impossible. But maybe things just hadn't got bad enough. No, seriously. This time I knew from talk number 1 that I'd found something I could really use. For the first time I wanted to study something, not because it was for Mitra study or for a retreat. I just wanted to know how to put this amazing set of teachings to use, to find a way to work with such an impossible, what seemed at the time such an impossible situation, and very, very painful. So point 3 is about taking adversity onto the path. By the gracious Lama's blessings, may I see whatever adverse events and sufferings befall me as tricks of the evil spirit of ego clinging, and use them as the path of bodhicitta. Or take adversity as the path. And it's similar to the one that Vadanya was talking about. So it's about seeing all our difficulties, no matter what they are, as there to assist us in our striving towards enlightenment for all beings. So the path is a kind of straight line, that you're not dodging around the difficult stuff. We take all our experience as an opportunity to wake up, no matter how boring, painful, embarrassing, irritating, terrifying, annoying, whatever it is. In this is the stuff we need to wake up. And the thing is, in those situations we forget, we get lost in all of that, and we completely identify with it and we forget. We need something that kind of explodes our habitual ways of doing things. And I think of the slogans a bit like the party poppers we had last week at the Buddha Day. A party popper went off right by my ear, and I was like completely stopped in my tracks, and my brain kind of fried for a minute. And that's what the slogans do. They stop you in your tracks. When you're right in the middle of one of those really difficult situations and you're just about to go into your usual response, if you can remember a slogan, they stop you doing that. So point 3 has several slogans, and I'm going to talk about 2 of them, which in my experience go hand in hand. Drive all blames into one is one of them, and be grateful to everyone is the other one. But I would add, be grateful to everyone and everything. So more about that later. The thing is that blame is encouraged and supported in our culture. It's considered absolutely right and proper to find out who is to blame for something that's gone wrong and to bring them to book. And as a teacher and a mother, I know that when something's gone wrong, the first thing that happens is, it's not my fault. It's his fault or her fault. We're terrified of blame. And it's one of the worldly winds, of course. We're blown about by it all the time. We're either fearing blame, blaming someone else, and we're kind of blown between those poles. So we take everything onto the path, and that includes other people. Those horrible people that do all that stuff, those really annoying things. So when someone gets in the way, it's like something has gone wrong. It's like our practice has been interrupted. It's not supposed to be like that. We totally forget about dukkha. We forget that that's just how life is. I'm supposed to be safe and happy. This wasn't the plan. Especially if we have a Buddhist practice, we can easily get into the trap of thinking that if I'm unhappy, then I'm doing something wrong. And we can blame ourselves and tell ourselves how rubbish we are. Or we can look outside of ourselves to find who's at fault. There has to be someone at fault. There has to be someone to blame. And it's amazing how quickly we shoot from dissatisfaction to blame. In the blink of an eye, we're blaming, and despite the fact that it's a really painful place to be, we think it somehow makes it better. She's causing my suffering, or he, or it. It's their fault, and we think that makes it better, that something has been solved when you find out who's at fault. And it's really interesting to notice in the course of a day how many times you get into that. It's amazing when you start noticing it. Almost all the time. For me, it feels like that anyway. And if you think, I'm not sure about that one, just go for a drive. Just go for a drive in your car up and down the motorway for a bit. And then immediately there's these people who, I'm doing it all the time anyway. So who is to blame? Drive all blames into one. Who is the one that we blame? Well, it's what Atisha calls the evil spirit of ego clinging. And this is very handy because it's always the case. It holds true for every angry, blaming situation. And the slogan encourages us to notice that when this comes up, it is our ego that is being threatened. Somehow, somewhere, on a very subtle level, our sense of ourselves is being threatened. Something is getting in the way of what we want. The thing that will make us happy is being kept from us. Perhaps our safety is threatened. And we can't really help thinking like this. We're hardwired and encouraged by our conditioning to think like this. To see ourselves as in terms of me and other, me and not me. And if I'm not happy, then it's either got to be you're to blame or I'm to blame. But it's really, this slogan turns all that on its head. And it's vital that it does that. Because to think in this way goes right against our highest spiritual values, and it breaks the vow of the Bodhisattva. There are lots of ways to work with the slogan, drive all blames into one. And I'm going to talk about one way to work with it, one that I've tried and found that it works. And I try and experience it in my body. I notice that there's a change, and it's very unpleasant actually. The feeling isn't a good feeling. Self-righteousness, it makes me really stiff. If I'm angry, obviously it's obvious, but maybe it's not. My heart beats faster, I get hot, I get tight in the chest. If I think I've been blamed for something, I get this horrible rush down my legs. Does anyone else get that? It's like a horrible hot rush that goes whoosh down my legs, and I feel sick, and my mouth goes dry. Do you get that?
How do I know myself?
And my mouth goes dry. Sometimes it's really vague, and I can just notice that something's wrong. I don't quite know what it is, but something's wrong somewhere. Maybe I'm frightened of being blamed, or I'm tipping into blaming someone else. But if I can feel it in my body and watch it, like a kindly scientist, kind of like a scientist with a clipboard, or a researcher, someone who's really interested in those sensations, but not identifying with it. If you can watch it and then catch it and use the slogan and say firmly and kindly out loud or to myself, drive all blames into one, then notice what happens then. Somehow, in my experience anyway, the heat is taken out of the situation. It really can stop you in your tracks, and then maybe you can let it go. The body's response is flagging up that your ego is struggling, but it's okay. You can let it go. Drop it. I am not my thoughts. I can respond a different way this time. I don't have to cling to this angry way of responding. I can try something else, something a bit softer, a bit more open. I can just blame the spirit of ego clinging and let the anger go. The danger is that we can get angry with our ego, and that's no good either. So we get angry with ourselves for being such a terrible person to have these feelings in the first place. And this is just another way of clinging to the ego. I'm so awful. I'm not supposed to have these feelings. No one would like me if they knew what I was really like. It's just ego clinging. And if I want to make progress, I've got to let that go as well. Drive all blames into one. We have to turn towards ourselves and smile. It's very important, though, to understand that this does not absolve us of responsibility. We stop blaming ourselves, but we have to take responsibility if we've been unskillful. Now, if there's unskillfulness there, we have to take responsibility for that. But all of this going into blame, we can just stop that. It's kind of like, what am I like? There I go again, kind of thing. And you can breathe into the discomfort of those feelings and breathe out a gentler response. Even say the word kindness, tenderness. Say those words invoking the Buddha and Bodhisattvas. We each have to work out our own way of befriending our egos. And this is a really good one. Dharma Dinner talks about tapping the pig on the nose. And it's like, if you imagine this great big pig at your kitchen, trying to get in your kitchen, and you can imagine the havoc that a pig would cause if it got in your kitchen. So you imagine the pig, and you bash it on, well, you tap it on the nose. And the pig doesn't get in your kitchen, because once the pig's in your kitchen, it's really hard to get it out. So the pig is the beginning of blame. So you tap it on the nose, and you don't let it in. You just don't let those thoughts go there. You don't allow it to get any further. So I once made a mental list of the situations when I get into this. Was years and years ago, and I used to call it my list of evil. Because they weren't evil things at all. They were just like ordinary things that people do, like not shaking the soya milk properly before they pour it into the tea. Or shaking it so much that it gets all frothy. Or not washing towels on 60 degrees. You know, evil. Not at all evil, it's just, completely bonkers. And although it's quite painful being in those situations, they're quite straightforward and easy to deal with. Not easy, they're not easy at all, but at least they're straightforward. But what do the teachings advise about anger and resentment and hatred that arises because of real harm that has been done? either to ourselves or to others. And that's a really hard one, when there is real harm done. And it's not just your irritation, but you're working with something that's quite big and quite painful and difficult. And maybe the harm was done to you or to somebody else. Or there are how do we drive these blames into one? And there are lots of reflections. One of them is that our enemy is our greatest friend, is one of them. More precious than the wish-fulfilling jewel. But I'm going to just offer one that I've worked with, is that in these situations when there is real harm done, you still have these physical responses. You can still breathe into them. You can still approach them with kindness, even if it's just kindness to ourselves. We can still tap the pig on the nose. And Pema Chodron says, the only way, even in these really, really difficult situations, is to make friends with our own destructive emotions. And blaming doesn't help, doesn't solve anything. So the link with gratitude. I recently did a solitary retreat for a week, and I took all the 7-point mind training stuff with me. And after a few days of meditation, I was really getting somewhere. It was great, it was brilliant. I was thinking, oh yeah, nearly there. And it was lovely and quiet. And then out of the blue, from nowhere, came the drip. The dripping noise. It was where could a drip come from? From a ground floor bedroom with, there's no upstairs for it to drip. There's no some in Suryamati's little cottage. It couldn't work. It couldn't be coming from outside. So I was really trying. I even tried to use the drip as an object of concentration. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, drip. I tried to work with in the herd, only the herd, and I really started to hate that drip. I was just getting somewhere, and then that drip came along. It's the drip's fault that I can't get into DR now. It's ruined my last chance, my last day, and then I remembered what I'd been studying all week. And it took ages for that one to filter through. So I just gently went through all the stuff I've been talking about, and then what came through whooshing through was this immense sense of gratitude for the drip. I loved that drip. The drip had made me wake up, and thank you, drip. I'd experienced that similar kind of thing with a sniffer in meditation a few years ago. And I was really grateful to her as well, but it so proves that it's not about them and what they're doing, it's about me and what I'm doing in here and in here. So drive all blames into one and be grateful to everyone or everything, including drips. So I'll just finish with a story. That is in the Pema Chodron's book, but I first heard it from Vadanya in a talk she gave years ago. And it's about a woman who's relaxing in a boat on a river. And she's having a really lovely time in the sunshine, and her boat's just gently going up and down. And suddenly in the distance she sees this big, huge boat going quite fast, heading for her boat. And she notices it's coming faster and faster. She says, my God, this boat's going to come. And she gets really, really angry. She starts jumping up and down, screaming, well, look out, you're going to crash into me, you're going to destroy my boat. And she gets really angry with the captain. What is the captain doing, allowing this to happen? So she's, look out, it's getting closer and closer. And sure enough, the boat crashes right into her boat, completely destroying her boat. So she clambers up on the big boat, tries to find the captain. She's running around, she's going to strangle the captain when she gets hold of him or her. And she discovers that the boat has lost its moorings and is completely empty.